Welcome to Spin the Wheel Showdown, where every video I sit down with a guest and we're going to spin that leader wheel. And depending on what the wheel gets, we're going to be playing a game with two different random leaders, some of the leaders we have not played, and going to see who is the better leader. Now let's spin that wheel and see what we get. What's up, everybody? The wheel has spoken, and I have been given VegaPunk to pilot here. And funny enough, this is actually VegaPunk Aggro. This is my friend Aegis's, who's across the table right now playing Purple Luffy. This is his list. It's funny enough, he's playing my list of Purple Luffy, and I am playing his list of VegaPunk. And yeah, this is VegaPunk Aggro, which means I'm going to be trying to flood the board as quick as possible, starting off with a turn 1 Atlas. Atlas being one of the greatest cards in this matchup, as she cannot be KO'd. I believe if my opponent has more life than me. So with VegaPunk only sitting at 2 life right now, going to be nigh unkillable, as Purple Luffy doesn't usually run, at least the newest lists don't run any kind of KO, other than the, ever so likely Kaido, though my list is not running Kaido. Big Mom can also deal with it as well. Gonna go ahead and play a Searcher, gonna look at the top 5, try to find myself some more fodder to put into play. Monkey D. Luffy being a very great pick here, as it'll allow me to clear a 4-drop character. And I think likely that's what we're going to put into play here. This might put my opponent in a bit of a awkward spot, as Purple Luffy going second already in an awkward spot. Going to swing a 6k at life, going to counter out of it with a 2k. But Purple Luffy already being in an awkward spot, going second, now going to be going up to their 4 Dawn, potentially 5 Dawn turn if they use leader ability. But Monkey D. Luffy causing some problems. If you know what the Purple Luffy deck likes to do when they have 4 to 5 Dawn, it's usually play out a Zorojuro to search up the rest of the combo pieces here, as my opponent also looks like they have a Bond Clay in hand. This also could have been a turn where they could have played a Sangoro if they had one to feign the Luffy's effect, as Luffy only KOs a 4 or less. But I have put my opponent in quite a pickle, and I'm being pretty aggressive here, as if you don't know, VegaPunk Aggro is basically using the VegaPunk's ability to put into play characters and then using all your extra Dawn to just swing pretty heavy. So I'm going to be trying to pressure some 7 and 8k attacks here as we move throughout the game, likely just 7ks to get at least 2 cards out of Purple Luffy's hand. And opponent's thinking pretty hard. Going to go ahead and send a 5k at lead here. I don't really want to go down to 1 at this point, just because my opponent could be really aggressive and just ignore my board and try to take me out. And one of the things that VegaPunk struggles with is going low on cards here. So we do have an event that can counter out plus 3k. But instead we're going to go ahead and give the 2k counter, as I'd like to potentially put that event on top of my life using VegaPunk's ability. That event allows me to put a 5 cost or less Egghead character into play. So if I decide to cash in the Luffy, I'll be able to put it back into play and then do some more work with it here. Luffy's going to be a double time attacker and blocker here. Opponent decides after the initial attack to see what I would do to play out the good old Bond Clay here. Opponent just leaves 2 Dawn up and passes the turn back to me. Going up to my 5 Dawn turn here, I've got some options, likely going to be putting something into play. I do have the VegaPunk stage, and if you're familiar with that stage, it's kind of nasty, especially in the aggro list, as for 2 Dawn, if you have 3 or less life, you can, at the end of your turn, you can set up one of your Egghead type characters. So that means I'm going to be able to swing and then put things into play. We're going to go ahead and activate ability first, putting an S-Snake into play. S-Snake, a newer card from 08. Will stop Bond Clay from attacking, and then we're going to play out the Eggman, or the Egghead stage here, and likely just going to swing some 7s here. We're going to go ahead and send 7k at lead here. Opponent does have a lot of 2ks in hand, but just going to go ahead and take that first hit, as they're kind of searching for something to play. As if you look, opponent has, Aegis has 6 or 7 2ks, got 1 in the yard already. Quite a bit of 2k. Is going to go to double counter out of that second hit here. And this is my first flub. We're going to see flubs. Flubs happen. We're playing new decks here. The wheel has granted us a deck that we've never played. And I am familiar with VegaPunk in the form of VegaPunk Control, not VegaPunk Aggro. So I have actually never played this stage outside of like a limited Rainbow Luffy environment. So I completely missed the stage effect here, being able to set up that Monkey D. Luffy to stop it from being attacked. So unfortunately, that's a bit of a misplay for me, and I'm going to learn to regret that here, as it's going to go to my opponent's turn. Opponent is up to 8 Dawn already. This would be a great turn for them to play out the 8-drop or the 7-drop Luffy, potentially putting that Zorojuro into play, but they do not have that card here. So opponent's going to go ahead and start with a 9k into Luffy. I'm just going to let it go. as I just only have 2 cards in hand. And then you're just going to play out a Zorojuro here. Look at the top 5 to find potentially something to put into something he could potentially work with next turn. Finds a Sangoro, finds a Gum Giant, and that's about it. The Lol, the Bond Clay, and the Big Mom not being able to be found by Zorojuro. Zorojuro only looks for his friends, only looks for his crew, so likely that Sangoro is going to go into hand here. Sangoro into hand. Great play off of the 7-drop Luffy. Does not have that yet. Opponent is just going to pass the turn back to me. The Atlas, being a champ, not being able to be attacked or killed in battle, is pretty good right now, as she's just going to continue to swing for free here. As we're going to go ahead and think about what we want to do this turn. We do have that 1-cost event we could put into play, or put into our life, to get that Luffy back, allowing me to kind of do some double action with Luffy in the future. But we're going to see here as what we want to do. We're going to activate 1, play out VegaPunk's effect. Going to put that Quasar help into life, kind of setting up that nice little trigger to pull the Luffy back into play. And then we're going to go ahead and tap 5 and play out another Atlas. I think Atlas, now I gotta look up, I have to look up Atlas's effect. I don't actually know what Atlas does. To a degree, let me see here. Atlas VegaPunk card, please be in English. Anyone ever have trouble trying to look up TC, like One Piece cards, and they're always just in Japanese? If you have less life cards than your opponent. Okay, so if I do knock my opponent, now that we are both at 3, Atlas's effect turns off, but we're gonna still, we swing a 6, and then we're gonna remember our stage this time and set up our S-Snake to prevent it from being attacked in battle here. Gonna pass back to my opponent here. Opponent finds a Lol Searcher, could be potentially used to find the 7-cost Luffy that he's been looking for. But Aegis here, not a lot to do. Gonna go ahead and play out the Lol Searcher here. Gonna look at top 4. Gonna see a Sangoro. Oh, he even looked, oh man. So flubs happen, right? We're learning. This is actually the first time Aegis has played Purple Luffy, so there were 2 mistakes that happened there with that Lol. For those at home, Lol looks at top 4, and Lol grabs a 2-cost or more. Now, this again, these are all fun and games, right? Nothing serious, nothing crazy, but I completely missed this as well, as Aegis looks at top 5 and grabs a Gum Giant. It happened. We're going to continue with the flow here, and gonna go ahead and play out Usohachi. Usohachi is going to rest the S-Snake as as Aegis is at 8 or more Dawn. Potentially going to launch a little bit of an aggressive here to try to deal with some of my board, as I am pretty low on resources here. Going to go ahead and swing a 9k. This one's going to go into life here. I think it's a little bit of a, I am going to trigger out, and now I have less life than my opponent, so those Atlases are no longer going to be able to be attacked into. Opponent's just going to copy S-Snake's power and swing 8k into S-Snake. I am just going to let that slide again. I only have 1 card in hand right now. And now those Atlases are turned back on, can no longer be attacked. Opponent's going to swing 5 at lead. I'm going to take it, and we're going to pull out a Shaka blocker right out of life. Pretty great. Got 4 bodies on board. This is going to be a pretty good turn. I might be able to clear a few bodies. I could swing Monkey D. Luffy and then use its effect to draw a card and then KO a 4 or less. So, you know, getting the 2 for 1 value with good old Monkey D. Luffy here, as we're up on 9 Dawn here. One of VegaPunk's biggest problems, and to a degree it was solved to a degree with Jewelry Bonnie from 08, but I haven't seen a Jewelry Bonnie yet. But I run out of cards pretty quickly, so we're gonna go ahead and go 6k into the good old Bond Clay. That is too much for my opponent to counter out of here, even though my opponent is representing that they have a Gum. And now we're gonna go ahead and likely gonna start swinging some 9s here, as we want to respect the Gum that we saw go into hand, and Luffy put one up with. I mean, if you're playing against purple Luffy decks, you know they're gonna always have one to a degree, especially if they have 1 Dawn up. Now they sometimes would bluff it, but it can definitely happen. While Aegis here decides what he wants to do. If you're enjoying this type of content, like the Spin the Wheel leaders, or like gameplay of One Piece in general, definitely join the crew, subscribe to the channel, and like the video. Let me know that you enjoyed this type of content. Aegis is going to go ahead and use the good old Gum Giant, -2 Dawn, discard the Sangoro to draw 2, take his leader up to 9k, and now going to use the Law to counter out of the 9k swing, taking himself up to 10k here. Now that the Gum Giant has been used, I'm still going to get a little aggressive here. And we're just going to swing another 9 at lead. And then we're going to swing an 8 at lead here with the Shaka blocker. knowing that we have the egghead event or stage in play, we can set up the shotgun at the end of the turn. So it's going to be an 8k going into lead here. An opponent's thinking here, going to go ahead and take it, as I think opponent only had a 2k in hand. Actually has that 7 cost Sanji, so that is a 1k. But and then I use the Luffy. We pop the Zoro Juro, and then we're gonna activate VegaPunk's effect with the last life, and we're gonna put a good old Edison on top. Edison being a body we can put into play off of life, but it does draw 2 and trash 2 if I have 2 or less life. So could use that to make my hand a little bit better. I think right now I've got a 2k and a 1k in hand, so could eventually convert those into at least 2 2ks, which would be pretty nice for trying to protect my board, as opponent just has some low powered bodies on the field right now. So we're going to see what my opponent decides to do. Does have that Sanji in hand, could play out the Sanji to try to establish a little bit of a board. Also has the 7 cost Luffy, but I think right now my opponent's mind is being able to KO some of my board here, or potentially go for lethal. We'll see here what my opponent decides to do here. I do only have 2 cards in hand, and my opponent has 3 attackers on board. Likely my opponent could potentially just try to spec the fact that I don't have a 2k, though there is an Edison coming into play. If I decide to take the Edison in hand, that's just a 2k, which either or, it doesn't really matter, right? Me potentially mathing this out, you know, the Edison is probably worth more like in hand than 2 random draws, but I like bodies on board to try to end the game here, and I think based on the amount of Dawn my opponent has, I could potentially get out of that last swing with just a 2k. But my opponent kind of hoping, if I decide to trigger out the Edison, to try to go for lethal here, as there's not a lot my opponent can do at this point. Yes, my opponent could go for a board, but I still have 2 cards in hand, and I could try to protect my board here. And I really only need 2 things to have here. So if my opponent decides to go for my board, I could just take the hit, right? If he sends one of my life and then put an S into play. We're gonna see 5k go at lead here. We're gonna go ahead and take it, and we're just gonna take the bait. We're gonna go ahead and play the Edison out. We're gonna draw 2. We're gonna see 2 non-counter cards. We're gonna throw those immediately in the yard here, and I continue to my opponent here. Opponent only has 4 Dawn up. Likely could swing like a 5k, 6k, or it looks like a 6k, 6k. So opponent kind of hoping that I don't see another 2k, since I did decide to trigger out the Edison. So we're just gonna look. We're gonna go ahead and take it. It is a KO trigger that Usohachi came in this play, and then it's gonna be a 6k going at lead. Opponent hoping again I don't have a 2k, and I have the 2k. So able to counter out a last attack here. Opponent only has 3 or 4 cards in hand. Looks like quite a few bricks, but I have 4 bodies on board and a whole lot of Dawn to work with, and not a lot going on in the hand, and we don't really need to have too much going on in the hand. Did we have the Nami in hand just to be able to potentially KO a 5 or less, but my opponent does not play out a blocker here, so likely we're just going to start swinging some 8Ks. So if we're going to go 8K lead, opponent with I think 1K in hand, we're going to go 8K again, and that's going to clean it up, as VegaPunk was able to just go way too fast. Those Atlases being kind of at that threshold where they couldn't be killed, and then by the time they could be killed, it was not worth it at that point. And that is VegaPunk beating up Purple Luffy. Purple Luffy did see an unfortunate draw, did not see the 7 cost until too late in the game, but man, did Purple Luffy see some 2Ks. Again, if you like this type of content, definitely subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video.